When we go to combine like terms, the key is that the like terms have to have the same power of the same variable. So when we look at problem number 1, we only see two possibilities. Either they have the first power of the variable, this x with an understood first power, or they have no power of the variable. So what we want to do is line up the things that are alike. So this 8x, and when this comes out of parentheses, plus a 2x, this 3 plus a positive 7. We can now see 8x and 2x are going to combine. 8 plus 2 gives me 10. 10, what? 10 of the x's. Then we have 3 plus 7. 3 plus 7 gives me 10 with no x's. So my final answer for this original question is 10x plus 10. Again, the goal here is really to find which terms are at the same power, combine them, and get a total for each of the different types of terms. There's going to be problems that deal with negatives that might be a little confusing, like this next one, but it's still important to figure out which terms go together and then worry about the negatives. So I'm going to start by saying this negative 2x and this positive x are like terms, this negative 5 and this negative 3 are like terms. Now when I go to deal with negative numbers, if I have a calculator, great, definitely use the calculator. If I'm trying to do it in my head, I basically need to say, do they have the same sign or do they have different signs? So for this first one, they have different signs, a negative 2 and a positive 1. When they have different signs, you do a subtraction problem and keep the sign of the larger number. So a subtraction problem, meaning 2 and 1, we do 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. And then we keep the sign of the larger number. The sign of the larger number was negative. So negative 1x is what we're left with, or just negative x. When we look at the next two terms that we have as like terms we're trying to combine, we have a negative 5 and a negative 3. When they have the same sign, you add and keep the sign. So when we add 5 plus 3, we get 8, and we keep that negative sign. So our final answer is negative x minus 8. Little trickier when we have a negative sign outside a whole parentheses. We need to understand that by the distributive property, that negative sign changes each sign of everything in the parentheses. It doesn't only apply to this first term. So when I go to rewrite things, this 10x comes out. This negative gets multiplied by 5x to become negative 5x. This positive 1 can just come down. Then this negative needs to be multiplied by this positive 4 to get a negative 4. That's the step that's most often missed by students, remembering that that negative also applies to that 4. When I go to combine the like terms, this positive 10x and this negative 5x gives me 10 minus 5 is 5 x's. Since the 10 is the larger number and it has an understood positive in front of it, the 5x is positive. I then have 1 and negative 4. These are different signs, so I subtract. 4 minus 1 gives me 3. And then the larger number had a negative in front of it, so I'm going to put a negative with it. Problem 4, I'm going to bring down the negative 9x. I'm going to apply this negative to the 5x to get negative 5x. I'm going to bring down the positive 2. When I apply this negative, negative times a negative gives me a positive. Negative times a negative 8 gives me a positive 8. I then combine like terms, a negative and a negative. Since they have the same sign, I add. 9 plus 5 equals 14. And then I keep the negative sign. So I get negative 9x and negative 5x combines to negative 14x. I have 2 and 8. When I combine them, I get a positive 10. They were both positive, same sign. I add them and keep that same sign. In problem 5, it's the first time we have squared terms to worry about, but really we have two terms that are squared terms, two terms that have the single power of x. The same way we lined up things with no power of x and things with the single power of x, here we're going to line up things with the second power of x and things with the first power of x. So second power of x is this 2x squared plus this x squared. First power of x is this positive 3x plus this x. So my final answer would be this 2 plus this understood 1 gives me a total of 3x squared. This 3 plus this understood 1 gives me a total of 4x. So my final answer would be 3x squared plus 4x. When I go to do problem 6, I can just write down this 5x squared, but I need to remember this negative sign gets applied to each of these two terms. So the negative times this 3x squared gives me negative 3x squared. The negative 4x can just come down. Negative times a positive 2x gives me a negative 2x. When I combine like terms, 5 and negative 3 have opposite signs, so I subtract. 5 minus 3 is 2. I keep the sign of the larger one. 5 is larger and it had a positive sign, so I get a positive 2x squared. Negative 4 and negative 2 have the same sign, so I add them. 4 and 2 add to 6, and then I keep that same sign, negative. So I get 2x squared minus 6x as a final answer. In problem 7, we have 3 different types of terms. Here we have x squared term, no power of x term, x squared term, single power of x term, no power of x term. So we need to be careful lining things up, making sure we're only combining things that are the same. And when I say the same, I mean they have the same variable to the same power. So we want to combine this 2x squared with this positive 6x squared. This 3 doesn't have any x's in it. So we can't combine it with something with x's in it like this 2x. This 2x is kind of all alone with no terms to combine with. What we can add the 3 to is this positive 9, because each of them have no power of x associated with them. When I add 2 plus 6, I get a total of 8x squared. When I add 2 to nothing, because there's no other terms with x's, I just get 2x. And when I add 3 plus 9, I get a positive 12. So my final answer would be 8x squared plus 2x plus 12. In problem number 8, I'm going to start out by bringing down the 10x squared. This negative gets applied to all 3 terms here. When I say gets applied to all 3 terms, it means it changes the sign in each of the 3 terms. So this first term, 3x squared, used to be positive. It becomes a negative 3x squared. I can then bring down this positive x. This negative changes what was a negative sign to a positive sign. So this becomes plus 5x. This negative changes this positive 4 to a negative 4. I can now combine the like terms. 10x squared and negative 3x squared. I do a subtraction. 10 minus 3 gives me 7. X squared, it keeps a positive sign because the larger one, 10, was positive. This positive understood 1x and this positive 5x combined, 1 plus 5, gives me a total of 6x. Finally, I have this negative 4 with nothing to combine with, so it just stays negative 4 because there's nothing else in the problem that has no powers of x. In problem number 9, I'm going to take this x squared, I'm going to add it to this x squared. I'm going to take this positive 3x. I'm going to add it to this negative 2x. I'm going to take this positive 2. I'm going to add it to this positive 6. When I do 1x squared plus 1x squared, I have a total of 2x squareds. When I do positive 3 minus 2 x's, 3 minus 2 gives me 1. I keep the positive sign. So I just get positive 1x or just positive x. The 6 is all by itself with nothing to combine with, so it just stays as plus 6. Final problem, I have this x squared term that I just bring down. This negative applies to this x squared, so minus x squared. I'm going to bring down this positive 3x. This negative applies to a negative 2x. Negative times a negative is a positive, so I get to a positive 2x. And then I have a positive 2 here, and I have a negative times a 6, so that gives me negative 6. So I'm looking above, I realize I missed something here, I apologize for that. I got confused, I thought this negative 2x and this 2 were the same term. Looking back, I'm seeing I really had a 2 here and a 6 here that I should have combined. This 2 plus this 6 should give me an 8, not a 6 here, so sorry about that. When I go down to look at this work on problem number 10, I have an x squared minus an x squared. Something minus itself leaves me with nothing. It's like I have $2 and I paid $2 for something. I had positive 2, I subtracted 2 from it, I'm left with no dollars. I had x squared, I'm subtracting x squared, there's going to be no x squared term in my final answer. Here I have a positive 3x plus another 2x. 3 plus 2 gives me a total of 5x. Here I have a positive 2 and a negative 6. When I have one positive term, one negative term, I need to do subtraction and then keep the sign of the larger term. Positive 2 and negative 6 becomes 6 minus 2, which is 4. Since the 6 has a negative sign in front of it and it's the larger term, it's a negative 4 that I get as my final answer. So it becomes just 5x minus 4.